The champagne in my flute had gone warm and flat 20 minutes ago. I held it anyway. It was a prop, something to do with my hands while I stood in the corner of the grand ballroom, rendering myself invisible. To the 300 people in this room, I was just part of the furniture. A guy in a men's warehouse suit that did not quite fit in the shoulders, standing next to a potted fern, watching the golden couple of Silicon Valley hold court. My wife, Sarah, looked like a diamond cut by a master jeweler. She was wearing a backless silver gown that probably cost more than my first car. She was radiant, laughing at a joke made by a man from the New York Times, her hand resting casually on the arm of a venture capitalist worth $3 billion. The banner above the stage read, Aura Systems, the future of predictive logic. Everyone here, the investors, the press, the hangers-on, they all believed Aura was Sarah. They believed the code that could predict market trends with 99% accuracy had sprung fully formed from her brilliant, charismatic mind. They were wrong. My name is Liam. I am the Chief Technology Officer of Aura Systems. I am also Sarah's husband. And most importantly, I am the one who wrote every single line of code that this room was celebrating. I spent the last 5 years in a windowless room, drinking stale coffee and forgetting what the sun looked like, building the architecture of a digital god. Sarah spent those 5 years building a brand. A young man with a headset scurried past me, nearly knocking the warm champagne out of my hand. He glanced at me, annoyed. "Excuse me," he snapped. "Server staff needs to clear the floor. We are about to start the keynote." He thought I was a waiter. I did not correct him. I just stepped back, pressing my spine against the cool plaster of the wall. Sarah took the stage. The applause was a physical wave crashing against the high ceilings. She stepped up to the microphone, soaking it in. "Thank you," she said, her voice smooth, practiced. "When I first conceptualized Aura, people told me it was impossible. They said I was dreaming too big. But I knew that if I just kept pushing, if I just kept coding through the sleepless nights, I would break through." I kept coding. I felt a sharp, cold twist in my gut. She had not written a line of code since college. She did not know Python from a grocery list, but watching her up there glowing under the spotlights, even I almost believed her. She was the visionary. I was just the mechanic. I looked down at my phone. It was 10:45 p.m. I had been awake for 36 hours straight, patching a server instability so this demo would not crash. My eyes burned. I looked back up at the stage. Sarah was smiling at someone in the front row. That was when I saw him. Julian Thorne. You know Julian Thorne even if you do not know tech. He is the guy on the magazine covers. The billionaire cowboy. The man who treats the global economy like his personal casino. He was sitting front and center, legs crossed, wearing a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. He wasn't clapping. He was staring at Sarah with a look that I recognized instantly. It was the look of a predator spotting a wounded deer that did not know it was bleeding yet. After the speech, the crowd swarmed. I stayed in my corner, nursing my headache. I watched as the circle formed around Sarah. Then the circle parted. Julian Thorne walked through. The room went quiet. The ambient chatter dropped to a hush. This was the moment. Aura needed Series B funding to survive. We had 3 months of runway left. If Julian Thorne wrote a check, we were the next Google. If he walked away, we were dead. I took a step forward. As the CTO and co-founder, I should be there. I should be answering the technical due diligence questions. But as I approached the circle, I stopped. Julian wasn't looking at the product specs. He wasn't looking at the projections on the screen. He was looking entirely at my wife's neck. "Impressive presentation, Sarah," Julian said. His voice was low, carrying that effortless authority that comes with having 10 zeros in your bank account. "Thank you, Mr. Thorne," Sarah said. Her voice trembled just a little. She was charmed. She was terrified. She was hungry. "Call me Julian," he said. "I've seen enough. I'm ready to lead the round. $50 million at a $400 million valuation." The gasp in the room was audible. That was double what we were asking for. Sarah's eyes went wide. Julian, that is incredible. We would be honored to. He held up a hand, stopping her. There is a condition, he said. I froze. I stood 5 feet outside the circle, holding my breath. Julian stepped closer to her, invading her personal space. He did it slowly, deliberately, letting everyone watch. I don't invest in companies, Julian said, his eyes locked on hers. I invest in people, and if I am going to put $50 million into Aura, I need to know the person running it, intimately. The air in the room seemed to vanish. My jet leaves for Aspen in an hour, Julian said. Just us. Weekend retreat. We can finalize the paperwork over vintage wine and private conversation, no lawyers, no tech support. He paused, and for the first time his eyes flickered over Sarah's shoulder and locked directly onto mine. He knew who I was. He knew I was the husband. He knew I was the architect. He looked at me with a smirk that was pure distilled arrogance. Then he looked back at Sarah. Leave the baggage here, Julian said. Come alone. I watched Sarah's face. I waited for the outrage. I waited for the slap. I waited for her to tell him to go to hell, that her husband was standing 10 feet away, that her dignity was not for sale for $50 million. I watched the calculations happen behind her eyes. I saw the ambition war with her morality. It wasn't even a fair fight. Ambition won in a knockout. Sarah looked at the check in his hand. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were blank. There was no apology in them. There was just a cold, hard assessment. I was an obstacle. I was heavy. I was dragging her down. She turned back to Julian and smiled. It was a dazzling, practiced smile. I have a bag in the car, she said. I can be ready in 20 minutes. Julian laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. Excellent. He put a hand on the small of her back and guided her away. Sarah didn't look back at me, not once. She didn't mouth, "I'm sorry." She didn't text me. She just walked out of the ballroom, out of the hotel, and out of our marriage, trailing the scent of expensive perfume and betrayal. I didn't make a scene. That is what the movies get wrong. In the movies, the husband flips a table. He throws a punch. He screams. In real life, when your entire world collapses, you go very, very quiet. I set my glass down on a passing tray. My hand was steady. That surprised me. I felt like I was vibrating, like a server fan spinning out of alignment, but my hands were steady. I walked to the coat check. I handed the girl my ticket. "Leaving early, sir?" she asked, popping gum. "Yes," I said. "The party is over." I walked out the front doors of the Fairmont Hotel and into the San Francisco night. It was raining because of course it was. A cold, miserable drizzle that soaked through my cheap suit in seconds. I could have called an Uber. I could have driven my car. But I needed to feel something other than the numbness spreading through my chest, so I walked. I walked down the steep hills, watching the water run into the gutters. $50 million. That was the price tag. 7 years of marriage. 5 years of building a company from a garage to a skyscraper. All of it sold for a weekend in Aspen and a check with too many zeros. I thought about the nights I sat up with her when she was crying because the beta test failed. I thought about the times I rewrote the entire kernel of the operating system because she promised a feature we didn't have yet. I had made her look like a genius. I had built the pedestal she was standing on, and she had just kicked me off of it. I reached my neighborhood around 1 a.m. The house was dark. It was a modern glass and steel monstrosity in no valley. Sarah loved it. I hated it. It felt like living in an Apple store. I walked inside. The silence was heavy. I went to the kitchen and poured a glass of tap water. I stood there dripping wet, looking at the stainless steel refrigerator. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text from Sarah. "Landed. Signal is spotty. Don't wait up. Huge opportunity for us. Love you. Love you." The audacity of those 2 words made me laugh. It was a dark, jagged sound that echoed in the empty kitchen. She thought I was stupid. She thought I was the beta male, the quiet coder, the guy who would just swallow this because I was lucky to be with her. She thought she could go to Aspen, do whatever she had to do to secure the bag, and come home to her loyal dog. She forgot one thing. I wasn't just the husband. I was the CTO. And in the world of software, the person who holds the keys is God. I walked into my home office. It was the only room in the house that felt like mine. 3 monitors, a custom-built mechanical keyboard, a server rack humming quietly in the corner. I sat down in my chair. The wet suit was uncomfortable, sticking to my skin. I didn't care. I woke up the computer. The screens flared to life, bathing the room in a cool blue glow. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is hot. Anger is messy. I was past anger. I was in a place of cold, hard logic. If she wanted to treat our marriage like a transaction, fine. I would treat it like a transaction. I opened the company's legal directory. I needed to see the structure. I needed to see exactly how screwed I was. I pulled up the incorporation documents. Sarah was the CEO, I was the CTO. We had a 50-50 split of the founder's shares, but shares didn't matter right now. Julian's investment would dilute us both. I started digging deeper. I looked at the intellectual property assignments. In a tech startup, the code is everything. If you do not own the code, you do not own a company. You own a marketing agency. Usually when a founder writes code, they sign a document called a PIA, Proprietary Information and Inventions Agreement. This document legally transfers the ownership of the code from the individual to the corporation. It is standard paperwork. Boilerplate. I found my PIA, signed and dated 4 years ago. I found the PIA for our lead engineer, Marcus, signed and dated. Then I went to find the update. 3 months ago, I had rewritten the core algorithm. We called it Aura 2.0. It was the engine that made the predictions possible. It was the reason Julian Thorne was willing to pay $50 million. Because it was a complete rewrite, our corporate counsel had drafted a new assignment agreement, a specific transfer of the new IP assets to the company entity just to be safe before the funding round. I pulled up the file. Status, pending signature. My heart stopped. I blinked, leaning closer to the screen. I had signed my side. I remembered doing it, but Sarah had to countersign as the CEO to accept the transfer. I remembered that day. She was rushing out to a photo shoot for Forbes. I had put the document on her desk. She had waved a hand and said, "I will get to it, Liam. Stop nagging me about paperwork. I am building a brand." She never got to it. I stared at the digital signature line. It was blank. I checked the timestamp on the file metadata. It had not been modified in 90 days. I sat back in my chair, the leather creaking softly under my weight. Technically, legally, Aura 2.0 did not belong to Aura Systems Incorporated. The company was currently licensing the software. But without that signature, the ownership remained with the original creator. Me. I owned it. I owned the algorithm. I owned the neural net. I owned the product that Sarah was currently selling to Julian Thorne in a chalet in Aspen. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. She wanted to be the boss. She wanted to make the executive decisions. Fine. I opened the terminal window, the black screen with the blinking white cursor. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I didn't need to hack anything. I had the root passwords. I was the administrator. I began to type. The sound of the mechanical keys was rhythmic, hypnotic. It sounded like rain on a tin roof. It sounded like judgment. Command, revoke license. Target, Aura Core server. Effective, immediate. I wrote a script. A simple, elegant loop. At 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, right when Julian would be asking for a live demo to show his partners in New York, the Aura platform would not crash. Crashing is amateur. No, the platform would simply lock. It would display a single message on every screen, every dashboard, and every client interface. Error. License expired. Please contact the copyright holder. And then, just for good measure, I encrypted the source code with a key that only existed in my head. I hit enter, the terminal flashed green. Command accepted. I stood up. I peeled off the wet suit jacket and threw it on the floor. I wasn't the husband anymore. I wasn't the furniture. I was the architect, and I had just evicted the tenants. I didn't take much. Material things felt heavy, and I wanted to be light. I packed a single duffel bag. Jeans, hoodies, my hiking boots. I took my passport. I took the hard drive containing the only unencrypted backup of the code. I went to the bedroom. I looked at the bed where we had slept for 5 years. I felt a phantom pain in my chest, a dull ache of mourning for the woman I thought she was. But the woman in Aspen, I didn't know her. I took off my wedding ring. It was a simple platinum band. I placed it on the kitchen island. Next to the ring, I placed a single piece of paper. It was a printout of the unsigned IP assignment agreement. I took a pen and wrote a note on the bottom. You forgot to read the fine print. I walked out to the garage. My Tesla was parked next to her Porsche. I didn't want the Tesla. It had GPS. It had an internet connection. It was a tracking device on wheels. I walked past it to the back corner of the garage where a dusty tarp covered a shape. I pulled the tarp off. Underneath was my 1998 Ford Ranger. I had driven this truck in college. Sarah hated it. She called it an eyesore. She begged me to sell it. I had refused, claiming sentimentality. Now it was my escape pod, no GPS. No satellite radio, just steel and a combustion engine. I threw my bag in the passenger seat. I turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life. I hit the button for the garage door. The gears ground as the door lifted, revealing the misty morning. The sun was just starting to turn the gray sky a bruised purple. I backed out. I didn't look at the house. I didn't look at the ring on the counter. I drove toward the Golden Gate Bridge. I was heading north, towards the trees, towards the silence. As I crossed the bridge, I rolled down the window. The wind was cold and smelled of salt. I took my iPhone out of my pocket. It was the latest model provided by the company. I held it out the window. For a second, I thought about the voicemails that would come. The panic, the screaming, I let go. I watched in the side mirror as the phone tumbled down, bouncing once on the asphalt before disappearing over the edge, falling hundreds of feet into the dark water below. I was free. Setting, 24 hours later. The scene is a chalet in Aspen that costs more per night than most people make in a year. Everything is made of timber and glass. There is a fire roaring in a stone fireplace large enough to roast a whole pig. Sarah was wearing a cashmere sweater and holding a glass of Pinot Noir. She looked tired but triumphant. She had done it. The night had been complicated, humiliating in ways she pushed to the back of her mind. Julian was demanding. He was cold. He treated intimacy like a business merger, efficient, dominant, and devoid of emotion. But it was done. Julian was sitting on the leather sofa, his laptop open. The wire transfer is queued, Julian said, not looking up. My partners in London just need to see the live system stability one last time before I authorize the release. Sarah smiled, masking her nerves. Of course, the system is flawless. Liam, my team, has been optimizing it all week. She sat down next to him and opened her sleek silver laptop. Connect to the main dashboard, Julian commanded. Connecting now, Sarah said. Her fingers flew across the trackpad. She logged into the admin portal. Usually the screen would fill with beautiful cascading data visualizations. Blue lines for market trends, green bars for prediction accuracy. It was a work of art. Today the screen was black. Sarah frowned. That is odd. The internet here must be slow. My internet is fiber optic, Julian said sharply. It is not slow. The screen flickered. A single dialog box appeared in the center of the black void. It was red. Critical error. License EXPIRED. Software REVOKED by copyright holder. Contact administrator. Sarah stared at the words. They didn't make sense. What is that? Julian asked. His voice dropped 10 degrees. I don't know, Sarah stammered. It must be a bug, a glitch. She hit refresh. License EXPIRED. She tried to bypass the admin screen and go to the backend. Access DENIED. She tried to open the source code to see what was wrong. File encrypted. Her hands started to shake. The glass of wine on the table rattled against the wood. Sarah, Julian said. He wasn't looking at the screen anymore. He was looking at her. Where is my product? It is there, she insisted, her voice rising to a panic. It is just... The server is down. I need to call Liam. He will fix it. He always fixes it. She grabbed her phone. She dialed Liam's number. The number you have reached is no longer in service. She pulled the phone away from her ear, staring at it in horror. She dialed the office. Pick up, pick up, pick up, she whispered. Marcus, the lead engineer, answered on the first ring. He sounded like he was hyperventilating. Sarah, oh thank God, where are you? Marcus, what is going on? She screamed. The dashboard is down. Julian is waiting. It is not down, Sarah, Marcus said. It is gone. What do you mean gone? I mean locked, encrypted. The repo is empty. The local builds are bricked. And there is a message in the system log. What message? It says. It cites the PIIA agreement. Section 4, paragraph 2, ownership rights. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. She felt lightheaded. The agreement, she whispered. Sarah, Marcus asked, his voice quiet. Did you sign the transfer docs for Aura 2.0? Because the system says the IP belongs to Liam and he has pulled the plug. Sarah dropped the phone. It hit the expensive rug with a dull thud. She looked up at Julian. The billionaire was standing now. He had closed his laptop. The check was gone. The offer was gone. You tried to sell me stolen goods, Julian said. His face was a mask of disgust. No, Sarah pleaded, standing up, reaching for him. No, Julian, please. It is a mistake. My husband, he is just. He is upset. I can fix this. Julian brushed her hand away like she was contagious. Get out, he said. Julian, please. Get out, he roared, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Get out of my house. Find your own way back to San Francisco. If you ever contact me again, I will bury you under so many lawsuits your grandchildren will be bankrupt. Sarah stumbled back. She grabbed her bag. She ran out into the snow, into the cold, blinding white of Aspen. She had sold her marriage for $50 million, and now she had neither. Setting, 1 week later, San Francisco. The conference room at Aura Systems smelled of fear and stale takeout. Sarah sat at the head of the table. She looked 10 years older than she had a week ago. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, but stray strands were escaping. She wasn't wearing makeup. Across from her sat her lawyer, a woman named Patricia who cost $800 an hour and looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. Can we sue him? Sarah asked. Her voice was raspy. He stole the company assets. That is theft. That is sabotage. Patricia sighed. She pushed a file folder across the mahogany table. I have had 3 junior associates review this for 48 hours straight, Sarah, Patricia said. We can't sue him. Why not? Sarah slammed her hand on the table. He destroyed us. Because he did not steal anything, Patricia said calmly. He took his own property back. Patricia opened the folder. She pointed to the blank signature line on the document. You never signed the transfer, Patricia said. Legally, Liam never assigned the copyright for the new code to the company. When you tried to sell the company to Thorne, you were effectively selling Liam's personal property without his permission. He had every right to revoke the license. Sarah put her head in her hands. So what do? We negotiate, Patricia said. We beg, you need to get him to sign this document. If he signs it, we can restore the system. We can maybe salvage the company. I can't find him, Sarah whispered. He is gone. His phone is dead. His cards are inactive. He is a ghost. Then you need to find a medium, Patricia said, standing up. Because without him, Aura Systems is worth exactly $0. The door opened. Marcus walked in. He was holding a box of his personal belongings. Marcus, Sarah asked. Where are you going? I quit, Sarah, Marcus said. He didn't look angry. He just looked disappointed. We can't pay payroll. The servers are dead. And honestly, I saw what you did. Leaving him behind for the gala, going with Thorne. He shook his head. Liam was the heart of this place, Marcus said. You were just the face, and a face without a heart is just a mask. He walked out. Sarah sat alone in the silent conference room. The logo on the wall, the one she had paid a design firm $50,000 to create, looked down at her. It looked like a tombstone. Setting 3 months later, Montana. I was chopping wood. It is a cliché, I know. The heartbroken man retreating to the woods to chop wood. But there is a reason it is a cliché. It works. There is something honest about an axe. You swing it, the wood splits. Cause and effect. It is simple. It is the opposite of corporate politics. I had rented a cabin outside of Whitefish. I paid cash for 6 months up front. The owner, an old guy named Dutch, didn't ask questions. He just saw the look in my eyes and handed me the keys. I had grown a beard. The soft hands of a coder were gone, replaced by calluses. I slept 8 hours a night. I didn't drink champagne. I drank water from the well. I was poor, technically. My bank accounts were tied up in the frozen assets of the company, but I felt richer than I ever had in San Francisco. I walked inside the cabin. It was small. A wood stove, a single bed, a table. On the table sat my laptop. It was open. I had set up a Google alert for Aura Systems. I scrolled through the headlines. Aura Systems files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. CEO Sarah Miller investigated for securities fraud. The unicorn that wasn't, how Silicon Valley's darling crashed and burned. I felt a twinge of pity, just a small one. She had wanted to fly close to the sun. She forgot that I was the one who built the wings. I clicked on a link to a tech podcast, The Valley Voice. I hit play. So the story is insane, the host said. The husband, this guy Liam, who nobody knew, he literally bricked the entire company from his home office and vanished. Just walked into the woods. Is he a villain? The co-host asked. I mean, people lost jobs. Maybe, the first host said, but you have to respect the move. The CEO tried to cut him out of the deal, tried to sell his work, and he just took his ball and went home. It is the ultimate power move. If you build the castle, keep the key. I closed the laptop. I wasn't a villain. I wasn't a hero. I was just a guy who finally learned the difference between being needed and being used. There was a knock on the door. My muscles tensed. Nobody came up here. The driveway was a mile long and covered in snow. I grabbed the axe handle, just in case, and walked to the door. I opened it. Standing on the porch, shivering in a coat that was too thin for Montana, was Sarah. The wind howled through the valley, a low, mournful sound that rattled the single pane of glass in my cabin door. Sarah stood on the porch. She looked like a ghost who had taken a wrong turn at a ski resort. She was wearing designer boots that were ruined by the mud and a coat that cost $3,000 but offered no protection against the Montana chill. Her lips were blue. Her mascara had run, leaving dark, jagged tracks down her pale cheeks. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavier than the snow piling up on the roof. Are you going to let me in? She asked. Her voice was thin, brittle. It sounded like dry leaves being crushed. I didn't move aside immediately. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in months. Back in San Francisco, Sarah had been a giant. She had filled every room with her energy, her ambition, her sheer force of will. Now, standing against the backdrop of the Rockies, she looked small, insignificant. Why are you here, Sarah? I asked. My voice was calm. It didn't waver. Please, she whispered. I can't feel my toes. I stepped back. It wasn't forgiveness. It was basic human decency. She stumbled inside. The warmth of the wood stove hit her and she shuddered violently. She walked to the fire, holding her hands out toward the cast iron. Her hands were shaking so badly that the diamond bracelet on her wrist, a gift from me for our 3rd anniversary, glinted frantically in the firelight. I closed the door. I locked it. The heavy bolt slid home with a solid, metallic meaningfulness. I went to the kitchenette. I poured a mug of black coffee from the pot on the stove. I set it on the rough wooden table. Drink, I said. She turned and took the mug. She held it with both hands, using it to thaw her frozen fingers. She took a sip, grimacing at the bitterness, but she drank it. I tracked you down through the IP address of the server ping, she said, staring into the dark liquid. When you revoked the license, the system sent one final packet of data, a geolocation tag. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. I know. I let that packet through. I wanted you to know I was alive. I didn't think you would drive 1,200 miles to tell me you were sorry. She looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed. I'm not here to say I am sorry, Liam. I raised an eyebrow. No. I am here to make a deal. I laughed. It was a short, dry sound. A deal, Sarah. You have nothing to trade. You have no company. You have no product. You have no husband. She set the mug down hard. Coffee sloshed over the rim. I have debt, she snapped. The sudden anger brought a flush of color to her cheeks. I have creditors calling me every hour. Julian is suing me for fraud. The landlord is evicting me from the headquarters. I am looking at prison, Liam, real prison for securities fraud, for selling an asset I didn't own. She took a breath, her chest heaving. I need the key, she said. I need you to unlock the code just for 24 hours. Why? So I can sell it, she said. Not to Julian, to a competitor. Google is interested. If I can show them the working algorithm, they will buy the assets for pennies on the dollar, enough to pay off the debts, enough to keep me out of jail. I walked over to the table and sat down opposite her. I looked at the woman who had promised to love me, to honor me, to cherish me. You want me to save you, I said. I want you to be reasonable, she countered. You built it, but I sold it. We were partners, Liam. Does that mean nothing? Partners share the credit, I said softly. Partners don't leave each other standing in a ballroom while they fly to Aspen with a billionaire. She flinched. I didn't sleep with him. It doesn't matter, I said. You got on the plane. The room went quiet again. The only sound was the crackle of the burning pine in the stove. Liam, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. If you don't do this, I am destroyed. Is that what you want? Revenge. I looked at my hands. They were rough now, calloused. They were the hands of a man who built things, not a man who manipulated people. I don't want revenge, I said. Revenge is for people who care. I just want to be done. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. She slid it across the table. Divorce papers, she said. I signed them. You get the house, what is left of the equity anyway. You get the truck. You get full custody of the dog. I didn't look at the envelope. And in exchange, I asked. In exchange, you sign the IP transfer. You give me the encryption key. I sell the code to Google. I pay the debts. We never speak again. It was a clean break. It was tempting. I could sign the paper, give her the digital key, and she would disappear from my life forever. She would get her bailout. She would survive. But then I remembered the ballroom. I remembered the way she looked at me when Julian made his offer, like I was an obstacle, like I was luggage. If I gave her the code to sell, she would learn nothing. She would think that people are just resources to be mined. She would think that she could break things and then just buy her way out of the consequences. I stood up. I walked to the window. The snow was falling harder now, erasing the world outside. No, I said. What? Her voice rose an octave. I won't let you sell it, I said. I won't let you take my work, the work of 5 years of my life, and trade it for your freedom like a poker chip. Then you are sending me to prison, she screamed. She stood up, her chair scraping violently against the floorboards. You are a monster. I am not finished, I said, turning to face her. I walked to my laptop. I woke it up. The screen glowed in the dim cabin. I will help you avoid prison, I said. I will help you pay the debts, but not by selling the code. Then how? She demanded. By giving it away. She stared at me, confusion knitting her brow. What? I'm going to release Aura 2.0, I said. Right now, under an MIT open source license, free for everyone. Anyone can use it, anyone can modify it, anyone can build on it. You can't, she stammered. It is worth millions. It was worth millions when it was exclusive, I corrected. When it was a secret weapon, but if everyone has it, it has no market value. Then how does that help me? She cried. Because, I said, typing a command into the terminal. If the code is open source, you can't be sued for fraud. You didn't hide the asset just became public domain. The lawsuit from Julian falls apart because there are no damages if the product is free. You won't make a dime, Sarah. Google won't pay you. You will walk away with $0, but you will walk away free. I hovered my finger over the enter key. This is the choice, I said. I press this button and the world gets the technology. Hospitals can use it to predict patient outcomes. Non-profits can use it to track climate change. It becomes a tool for humanity, not a toy for billionaires. I looked her in the eye. Or, I said, I leave it locked, and you explain to the judge why you sold a box of air to Julian Thorne. She looked at the laptop. Then she looked at me. She realized in that moment that she had no leverage. She had no power. She was just a user, and I was the admin. She slumped back into her chair, all the fight drained out of her. Do it, she whispered. I didn't hesitate. I pressed enter. A progress bar flashed across the screen. Uploading to GitHub. Status, public, license, MIT open source, upload complete. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't realized I was carrying. It was gone. The $1 billion algorithm, the golden handcuffs. It belonged to the world now. I closed the laptop. It is done, I said. You can go. Sarah stood up slowly. She looked at the divorce papers on the table. She didn't take them back. You really hated me that much? She asked quietly. I didn't hate you, I said. I just finally respected myself enough to stop building your pedestal. She nodded. She pulled her coat tight around her. She walked to the door. She paused with her hand on the latch. You were right, she said, her voice barely audible over the wind. About the furniture. I never noticed the table until it was gone. She opened the door and stepped out into the storm. I watched her walk down the long, snowy driveway until she was just a dark smudge against the white, and then she was gone. Setting, 2 years later. The classroom smelled of chalk dust and cheap floor wax. It was a community center in East Portland, a converted warehouse with exposed brick walls and questionable heating. It was a long way from the glass offices of Silicon Valley, and I loved it. Okay, settle down, I said. 20 students looked up at me. They were kids from the neighborhood, high school dropouts, single moms looking for a career change, people who the tech world usually ignored. Today we are talking about encryption, I said, picking up a marker. We are talking about how to protect what you build. A hand went up in the back. It was a kid named Leo, 17 years old, sharp as a tack. Mr. Liam, he asked, is it true what they say on Reddit, that you are the guy who wrote the Aura protocol? The room went quiet. They all looked at me. To them I was just Liam, the guy who wore flannel shirts and brought donuts on Fridays. I smiled. I wrote a version of it, I said, a long time ago. Why did you give it away? Leo asked. You could be on a yacht right now. I looked out the window. It was raining, a gentle, gray Pacific Northwest rain. Yachts are lonely, I said, and besides, if I had kept it, I wouldn't be here. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 5 p.m. Class dismissed, I said. Do not forget your assignments. If your code does not compile, I am not debugging it for you. They groaned, but they were smiling as they packed up their bags. I walked out of the building. Standing under the awning, holding 2 umbrellas, was Alina. Alina was a librarian. She didn't care about stock options. She didn't care about Series B funding. She cared about first editions and whether I had remembered to buy milk. She smiled when she saw me. It was a warm smile, a real smile. It reached her eyes. Hey, she said, handing me an umbrella. Ready to go? The Thai place on Hawthorne has a table for us. Ready, I said. I pulled my phone out to check the time. A news notification popped up on the lock screen. Tech Daily, former Aura CEO Sarah Miller promoted to regional manager at mid-sized logistics firm. I stared at the headline, regional manager. It was a respectable job, a normal job. She was climbing the ladder again, but this time she was starting from the bottom rung. She was safe. She was rebuilding. I swiped the notification away. I put the phone in my pocket. Everything okay? Alina asked, taking my arm. I looked at her. I felt the warmth of her hand through my jacket. I heard the sound of the rain hitting the pavement. I smelled the wet earth and the city air. For 5 years I had been invisible. I had been a ghost in my own life, haunting a machine I built for someone else. But now I was standing in the rain, holding the hand of a woman who loved me, not for what I could do, but for who I was. Everything is perfect, I said. We walked down the street, our footsteps splashing in the puddles, 2 people moving forward, leaving the ghosts behind.